All right. Hey, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Toby Israel, and I am an ESD instructor and a yoga teacher as well.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amy Schmidt, and I'm also an ESD instructor and yoga instructor based in Costa Rica, but from the United States.
I forgot to mention I'm also based in Costa Rica and from the US as well. And we were invited to talk about something that we've been doing a lot of both together and separately since training as ESD instructors in 2018, which is integrating our work as yoga and mindfulness teachers with our work as ESD instructors. And it's something that we're both really passionate about. We've seen for the last year and a half how effective this kind of integration can be, and we're looking forward to sharing some of what we've learned and some of what we do with all of you today. Do you want to say anything else by way of introduction before we start, Amy?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay. So before we actually start talking about what we do, we wanted to show you a little bit. So one of the things that we've been bringing into our ESD classroom is meditation and mindfulness practice in general. So I'd like to guide you through a very short meditation to get us all grounded and get us all sort of on the same wavelength to get started. And you're welcome to close your eyes if that feels comfortable. You're also welcome to just soften your gaze to the ground or the space in front of you. And begin to bring your awareness to where you are right now. Focusing really more on other sensations, so less on what you see and more on what you hear, on what you smell, on any taste that you have lingering in your mouth, on the temperature or the quality of the air touching your skin. Without telling yourself any stories about those sensations or those observations, just allow yourself to notice what's going on around you. What's happening in the space you're inhabiting right now. If it's possible, bring your feet to the ground so you can feel the soles of your feet connecting with the ground. Rest your hands gently in your lap. Relax your shoulders away from your ears. Relax the muscles of your jaw. Relax your tongue. Relax the space between your eyes. Now bring your awareness especially to your breath. Not trying to change anything, just noticing how your breath is entering and leaving your body. Feeling your belly expand as you inhale and contract as you exhale. Feeling your ribs expand as you inhale and close together as you exhale. And feeling your chest rise and fall with every breath. Consciously begin to deepen your breath, trying to fill your body up with air as you inhale, filling the belly, the lungs, the back of the throat. Then trying to empty completely as you exhale, releasing air from the back of the throat, then the lungs, and then the belly. The body fills up like a balloon on the inhale and softens and relaxes on the exhale. Now focus your awareness especially on your center, in the space around your belly button and solar plexus. If it helps, you can bring your hands to rest on your belly. And start to feel your breath through the palms of your hands. Feel that soft movement with the inhale and exhale. And notice if there's any other sensation beginning to arise there in the center of your body. Maybe heat or cool, tingling, energy. There's no right or wrong thing to feel, just noticing what's happening there at your center right now. With every new inhale, imagine that you're bringing in new energy, new oxygen to your body, pulling it into your center. And with every exhale, you're moving that energy, moving that oxygen through your body all the way to the soles of your feet and the tips of your fingers and the crown of your head. Inhaling, drawing air, drawing energy into the center. Exhaling, allowing it to move through your entire body. If you're visual, you might give that air a color in your imagination. It could be the color yellow. Inhaling, drawing energy into the center. Exhaling, moving it through. And just stay with that visualization for a few more breaths. Feeling the breath through the palms of the hands, seeing the breath in your mind's eye. Feeling your body filling with energy, with awareness, with power, with presence. And we'll close with a few deep breaths together, inhaling through the nostrils. Exhale out through your mouth with a sigh. Again, inhaling through the nose. One more time. Good. As you feel ready, you can relax your arms. And gently open your eyes if you've had them closed. And feel free to share in the chat if you want to, just a word about how you feel right now after that meditation. And Amy, I realize that I can't see the chat and share my screen at the same time, so maybe, oh wait, maybe I can.
Relax. Hi, Emily. Very relaxed. Hi, Kim.
Really great. Thanks, Julie. Glad to hear that.
Lovely. Very, thank you.
So meditation is something I will often bring in at the beginning of an ESD class or workshop. Anytime it feels like the group needs grounding or needs to sort of reset their central nervous system, and then at the end of the class, sort of as a closing activity as well. And some of the themes, we'll come back to this. I think we'll refer back to this because some of the themes that we bring up in our meditations are also relevant to other ways that we bring in mindfulness to our ESD classes.
And I also start every ESD class I ever teach with if not a meditation, at least a few moments of breaths together, and sometimes connecting breath with some very simple movements, like inhaling and extending arms out and up, and exhaling and lowering arms down. And we're going to get into that a little more, of distinguishing between like how we frame it, because I don't always call it meditation, depending on what the group is. But I always bring that a few moments in, at least a few moments in at the beginning and at the end. And it's just how whether or not I frame it as meditation or just say we're going to take some deep breaths together. Because I find that really important for starting with getting centered and creating a space, and ending with it too.
So, how are yoga, mindfulness, and ESD connected? I know for me, and I think Amy, for you as well, it's just been this really natural integration to bring yoga and mindfulness into ESD, and it's because this list, it's very present in both practices or both disciplines. And so it's never felt like there's any need to force a connection. It's just what we do as yoga teachers and what we do as ESD teachers are very closely interlinked. And so some of those are awareness, breath, mind-body connection, what Amy was talking about, sort of linking breath and movement, or linking mental awareness with what we're doing with our physical bodies. And then there's a level of community building, where I know I've experienced a lot of community in ESD trainings, and then also in the ESD classes that I teach. Even in a 3-hour workshop, a sense of community sort of emerges, and the same thing can be true of a yoga class or a yoga retreat. And then we found that both of these practices really support self-love and self-confidence and self-worth. Amy, do you want to add anything?
Just the like you said, the really natural link or connection here, especially for me, what is the mind and body connection and body awareness, which yoga as a practice and is such a, there's so much about yoga, and there's like what people think of that's yoga, which is going to an hour and a half long class and doing some postures and breathing a little bit, but it's this whole body of philosophy and thought and practice. So there's so much involved in that, but to me, these very fundamental things of body awareness and connecting with the breath, connecting with the body, and connecting that with your mind is so important to me about yoga. And then it just fits so well with ESD, and really getting into our bodies and getting grounded and coming to our center. So yeah, the link is very natural.
And I know there's some people joining us today who I'm pretty sure also bring in some elements of yoga or mindfulness to their classes. So if anyone wants to add something to this list, feel free to write it in the chat. Are there other ways that you found connection between yoga and mindfulness and ESD in your classes? Oops. And in the meantime, we can start talking about core themes.
So we've done a variety of different formats together, and then each individually. And like, for example, one of the first that we did was a 5-hour workshop, and we opened with an hour yoga class, and then we did a 3-hour ESD workshop, and then we closed with an hour yoga class. And then we did a retreat where it was a week long of all yoga and ESD. Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. But I just wanted to, you can go back to the core themes. But in different formats and with different time, we have different yeah, a different time that we allow to expand on the different core themes. So if it's in a short class, we might touch on these themes, but not really develop them really deeply. But in a longer format, we have more time to develop the themes and connect them to ESD. So these are a couple of the themes that we have found that work. And I often talk about the third chakra and power center in my classes as well. And then again, it's just depending on how I frame it, like depending on who I'm teaching is how I frame it. Because the chakras can get kind of esoteric and kind of out there for a lot of people. Even in yoga, there's a lot of information that doesn't necessarily need to be brought into an ESD class, especially if there's not a lot of time. But I like to always bring that mind-body awareness to the center, to our core, which we do a lot of in ESD, of course, but really like realigning and bringing focus and attention there very often throughout the course. So I'll start maybe with a short meditation focusing on the power center, and then constantly bring that back throughout the course. And then another theme is self-love, which Toby mentioned already. And it works really well with yoga. It works really well with ESD. There's a variety of different ways that we can access it. And I'm going to expand on it a little more in the next slide. And then grounding as well. So this is something that I do in every single yoga class and every single ESD class now, and that I'm kind of obsessed with, but like with how we put our feet on the ground. And I think it's so important to like come into that connection and really feel ourselves connected to the ground in everything we do in life. And then in the classes, it's really good to just constantly, like I said, refocus our attention on how we're standing and how we're placing our feet, how we're placing our bodies, and how connected we are, and how strong we feel when we really bring our attention into how we're connecting to the earth. So we're going to close as well. I'm going to close with another meditation, and we're going to move through some of those a little bit more, kind of the way Toby did in the opening meditation. But to expand on these a bit, the first one that I mentioned is our power center, which is called Manipura. This is our third chakra. So if you don't know anything about the chakras, we have 7. So they start at the base. So our root chakra is at the bottom. Our second chakra is our sexual center. And then our third chakra is here just between the navel and the breastbone. So it's right at our center. And this chakra is considered the source of our personal power and wisdom. It governs self-esteem, warrior energy, and power of transformation. Helps us connect with our purpose, and then allows us to, as we connect with our individual purpose, expand that out into the collective. So it makes a lot of sense to relate that to ESD. And according to Vedic tradition or Vedic thought, when our third chakra is open and balanced, we feel confident, we have a strong sense of purpose, and are self-motivated. And when it's out of balance or blocked, we may have issues with anger and control, feel low self-esteem, and have difficulty making decisions. So when we've done longer formats of workshops and retreats, we really get into that third chakra and really explore what it means to open it, and explore positions and postures that work with it. It also has to do with digestion, and it's associated with fire. So, and relating our breath to the element of fire. So for a yoga class that was about the power center or the third chakra, I would start with again with a meditation focusing on that place like Toby did, and then whatever positions that we do, I would encourage the class to feel that every position and posture that we do comes from our center. So really keeping our attention and our awareness focused in our center. So even if you're just sitting, you start sitting on the floor in a yoga pose, and maybe you start making some circles with your body, feeling how those circles come from your center and originate there, and really keeping your attention there. So same if you move into cat-cow, which is on your hands and knees, and expand and open and then contract, feeling how those movements, even though you're making bigger movements with your body, they're coming from your center. And then working through some standing postures, and of course the warrior 1 and warrior 2, and really feeling how strong and how stable and how grounded you can feel in those warrior postures, and how powerful when you really focus on them coming from your center. So in all the postures, you're having that awareness here, and then as you move between them, you're moving from this place. So that's power center. There of course is so much that you can bring into relating that chakra to your yoga class and to your ESD. And then of course, even if you aren't a yoga teacher, which we're going to talk more about that too, or even if you're not going to teach a yoga class, but you just want to do a couple minutes of this kind of thing, you can work it in. Self-love is the next theme, and this is one that I use in yoga class a lot too, whether with or without ESD. And I've found that when it comes to self-love, I often got used to get mad at self-love because I thought it was like this other thing on my to-do list. Like, oh, I gotta my therapist says I have to do self-love. Okay, what does that even mean? But when I think about it in yoga, in relation to yoga, one thing that I've really started to focus on is thinking of my body at the cellular level. So we have 30 trillion cells in our body, and they each have different functions, and they communicate with each other, and we shed cells, and they change. So every time we inhale, we're oxygenating all those 30 trillion cells in our body. So I like to really get into that in my yoga practice, and thinking and visualizing that air coming in through our lungs and then oxygenating all those cells in our body. And so as we do that, not just sending oxygen to all the cells, but really imagining and visualizing and feeling that we're infusing each of those 30 trillion cells with love as well as oxygen. So for me, that's what works. When I think about self-love, it's really getting into the little tiny parts of my body and loving all of them, instead of this big concept of oh, I have to love myself. Because I don't know what that's supposed to mean. But for me, what it means is doing it on this cellular level. So anyway, that's just something that I like to bring into my yoga practice. And then again, with a longer format, there's so much you can do with that. But if you're just teaching a shorter format class, you can bring that in and work it in lots of different shorter ways. And then grounding, like I said, connecting the feet to the earth. So wherever you are, if you can bring your feet to the ground, if you're sitting in a chair, I meant to ask you all at the beginning, but if you're not barefoot, if you can be barefoot, that's cool. If not, just bring your feet flat to the ground, and you can stand or you can just sit with your feet flat, and then bring your attention into the bottom of your feet, and then try to focus all your attention there. And then when you do that, when you bring your attention to the bottom of your feet, notice what happens. So you might feel a sensation, maybe tingling, or you just really your bottom of your feet kind of like they're talking to you a little bit. So with that sensation, feel how you can really connect the bottom of your feet to the ground. We have 20 something muscles on the bottom of each of our feet. And so they work really hard to keep us walking and standing through life, everywhere we go, but we don't always give them lots of attention. So I like to focus attention on the bottom of the feet. And I do that in every yoga class, every ESD class, regardless of what I call it. It's just have people bring their attention there. Notice all those little muscles. And when you start noticing them, feel them activate. Feel what's going on down there. If you're not wearing shoes, maybe lift your toes and then feel what happens in all those little muscles. Spread your toes and then lower them, and just feel how connected your feet are to the ground. So that's a really grounding practice that I like to bring in whatever the other theme is. but or to any class whatsoever, but you can build a whole themed class just about that grounding and connecting to earth, connecting your body, starting with your feet into the earth, and how strong that and stable that makes you feel. So those are three of my favorite themes that connect yoga and ESD. And that's how I've developed them to work. But of course, there's different directions you can take them in. And if you have any questions about that, we'll answer questions at the end. Toby, do you have anything to add about any of those themes or any others?
Yeah, I was going to add something, but first, I can't get back to the chat now, and there were some good answers in there. I don't know if you want to read a couple of them just about other ways that people have connected ESD.
I don't know actually how to see it either because I'm on my phone instead of my computer.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that later then. Something I wanted to add about the core themes in general is that the reason we call them core themes is that they're sort of threads that run through a lot of our ESD classes and workshops. So there are certain practices that focus on these, like bringing in yoga, bringing in meditation, bringing in grounding practices. But there are also things that will just come up repeatedly throughout a class. So I'll start with a meditation like the one I just led at the beginning of this webinar and have people really find that awareness of their power center, of their Manipura. And then when we get into using the voice, we'll direct people back to bringing their awareness to their center and yelling from the center. When we start yelling, we'll cue people back to their feet for all of the physical techniques to sort of bring up power from the earth. So the technique if you're doing a palm heel strike, it's not just your arm, it's your whole body, starting with rooting down through your feet and bringing that energy all the way from your feet to the heel of your palm. Self-love is a theme that could come up a lot in discussions of boundaries. It's something I've started to say a lot in my classes, that setting boundaries or saying no is an act of self-love, and it's an act of compassion for another person. So there's certain practices that focus on these themes, but there are also themes that can just show up. They're like running narratives throughout an ESD class. And then one more, and I think it's actually the next slide. Yeah. So something I forgot to mention, another important connection for me between ESD and yoga or mindfulness is they both teach us about interpersonal connections and communication. So this is a photo from a retreat that Amy and I did together in Costa Rica last fall called the Warrior Princess Retreat. And this wasn't even part of the class. But we also did a little bit of partner yoga in one of our morning yoga sessions. And you don't need to be an acro yoga teacher to bring in this principle. But something I've started to do a lot in my ESD classes is focus on the yes as well as the no. That's the fastest way to say it. So with ESD techniques around communication and boundary setting, we work a lot on how to say no. No, I don't like that. No, I don't want to drink. I don't want you to touch me. Stop bothering me. Stop touching me. Stop following me. And that's incredibly important. But what's also important is learning how to say yes. Like, I want you to do this, or that feels good. Please keep doing that. So things like partner yoga, partner stretching, partner meditations, massage, they can help us practice things like positive touch and what I'm calling positive boundary setting. So working with our yes in interpersonal relationships as well as the no.
And it's really like getting comfortable with both and learning how both feel at the same time, because even in partner yoga, when you're with someone that you trust and you're having an intimate, you might have an intimate relationship or partnership with at that point, you still might not be comfortable with all the things that whether it's being upside down in a position or whether it's just a certain form of touch that you don't like. So it's really learning how to be comfortable in both, saying yes and no.
Exactly. And then, yeah, I think we can move along. If anyone wants to know more about that, you could ask. We're gonna have time for questions after we finish. So Amy started to mention this. There are a few different structures that it's taken for us to integrate yoga and ESD. The first workshop that we taught together that did this, I think it was a 5-hour workshop or a 6-hour workshop in Samara, where Amy lives. And we started with a yoga class and we ended with a little bit of partner yoga and stretching, and then had basically a 3-hour intro ESD class in the middle. And that's a format I like a lot for, and after this we'll talk about different ways that we frame this integration. You know, sometimes we won't talk about yoga, sometimes we don't explicitly say we're doing yoga and ESD, we just bring in some of these themes. But for an audience that's interested in yoga and interested in self-defense, that kind of format can be really effective. The yoga class is a great warm-up. It introduces a lot of the themes that we then bring into the ESD class. It gets people into that space of awareness and mind-body connection. That's really good preparation for learning all of the ESD techniques. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out on that one. And then another format that I've been really excited about is creating retreats that are focused on yoga and ESD. As I mentioned, Amy and I did one last fall, and hopefully if things open up, we'll do another one this fall called the Warrior Princess Retreat. And that was a 7-day retreat with daily yoga and daily empowerment self-defense. It ended up being about 10 or 12 hours of ESD, and then an hour and a half of yoga a day, an hour of yoga a day. And then we had a lot of other activities like waterfall jumping, farm tours, farm to table meals. We were staying at an eco retreat center in the rainforest in Costa Rica. And I've done another version of that called Mujeres Fuertes, and that one's in Spanish for Costa Rican women. Same idea, only it's 3 days instead of 7. So for people who can't take a lot of time off work, that's a little bit more accessible. It's just taking a long weekend, basically. Otherwise, same thing. We pack in 10 to 12 hours of ESD into 3 days, daily yoga, song circles, fire ceremony. And there's so many things I love about the retreat format. It's a way to get people really immersed into a practice or into several practices. So rather than, you get people for 2 hours a week, you get people 24/7 for 3 to 7 days. And a lot of the learning that happens in that format happens outside of the classroom. So you end up getting into really interesting discussions over dinner. You might just hang around outside after a class, continuing the conversation that was started in that class that day. There's also a lot of space for community building, for people to form relationships within the group, and sort of a deep level of healing, because it is what you create in a retreat is a really safe space for healing and learning and expression and reaching beyond the comfort zone as well.
And because people have stepped outside of their normal routines and daily lives for a certain amount of, whether it's 3 or 5 or 7 days or whatever, they're really present, and they're really there, and they really tend to show up for all the things, and kind of let go of some of their distractions. So it is really nice format.
And then the third thing on this list is, I called it self-mindfulness. And I think we mentioned it already, but that would be, not yoga is a selling point for some audiences, but it can be intimidating, or it can be the opposite of a selling point for other audiences, people who aren't familiar with yoga, or not, it's just not their thing. they might not go in for a yoga and ESD workshop. That doesn't mean that they can't benefit from some of the techniques and practices that we offer in those workshops. So we might teach a regular ESD course and bring in some breathing techniques, and bring in some grounding practices, and bring in some stretching or movement that comes from yoga without ever using the word yoga or using the word mindfulness. And so I think it comes down to knowing your audience and knowing what they'll connect with. The practices are of benefit, whatever words you use to name them, it doesn't matter. It's about sort of bringing the benefits in to your ESD classroom.
I think it's a lot about knowing your cultural context too. I've taught a lot of free community workshops here at the community centers, and then a lot of people are very religious and very conservative and reserved. And I've found in various contexts that the word meditation is not comfortable for people who practice certain religions. They see it as something that's outside of their religion, but most people don't have a problem with breathing. So it's just framing it in terms of like, we're going to take some deep breaths to relax, to connect with our bodies. And so like Toby said, the practices are beneficial to everyone. It's just how it's framed, or how we label it and how we approach it. So so even when I do these community workshops, I always start with the deep breaths and connecting with the body. It's just the language that we use around it.
And one thing we haven't mentioned yet so much is that it can be really beneficial. Sorry, did you guys just lose my screen? Yeah, sorry. How do I do this? There we go. Another really basic thing that's incredibly beneficial for participants are warming up properly and stretching properly if you're going to be doing any kind of physical training. So whether you call that yoga or you call that we're going to do some stretching now and take some deep breaths, as Amy said, it doesn't matter, as long as we're taking the time in our classes to get people warmed up properly and stretch after properly so that we can avoid injuries and train better. I don't know that there's really anything else to say about marketing approaches. Basically, these are two ways we approach it. And this would be sort of like in the materials that we put out there before a class. So when we're talking about an offering, something like the retreats, we market that as this is a yoga and empowerment self-defense retreat. And here's what it includes. For a community class, we might just call it self-defense. I often don't even, depending on the audience, sometimes the term empowerment isn't really appealing either to some people. So sometimes I'll just call it self-defense. I think we can be flexible with the language we use, and the more we know our audience, the more we know our participants, the better we can frame it to bring in the people who need to be there. And the other really key thing is that this is not just for yoga teachers or meditation teachers. Most of what we've talked about, anyone could bring into their classroom. You don't have to be a meditation teacher to walk people through some body awareness or some deep breathing or stretching or warm-ups or grounding. And so I think what we're doing is, as I said, it's really of benefit to people who are taking empowerment self-defense classes. I would love to see it become just part of the norm of how we teach ESD. Amy, did you want to add anything about it?
Just that
accessible.
I'm certainly happy to share, like any I can write up, you know, some of these short meditations, kind of like how to, and once you do them a few times, you wouldn't have to like read a script or anything, but like a short little script of how to walk someone through a deep breathing meditation or body awareness meditation, or how to work some of these things in. It's for people who aren't yoga teachers, but would be interested in using some of these techniques. So I'm happy to share any of the things we've talked about.
Yeah, likewise. So we're going to leave plenty of time for questions, but first.
So I'm going to lead us through a closing meditation before we get into questions. So I'd like to invite everyone to get comfortable. So wherever you are, find a space. You can sit cross-legged, or if you're in a chair, you can sit and have your feet on the ground. It's nice if you're barefoot, or if you're somewhere cozy, if you're sitting in your bed or on your floor, you can lie down. So just find whatever place is most comfortable for you where you are. And then go ahead and close your eyes. And bring your attention first to your breath. Feel your breath moving in and out of your body. Expanding with your inhales. And softening with your exhales. As you connect with your breath, feel your shoulders and how they naturally begin to relax and soften. Feel your face beginning to soften, the muscles of your face. And bring your left hand to your heart, top of your heart center, and your right hand on top of your belly. Feel your body expand into your hands with your inhales. And soften beneath your hands with your exhales. Maybe feel your heart beating. Feel your lungs expanding, contracting. Feel how you've made this energetic loop, your body, out through your arms, back through your hands. And then think about all those 30 trillion cells in your body. With every breath in, you're sending oxygen into every single cell of your body. So some of those cells are red blood cells. So you're oxygenating the red blood cells, and then your heart's job, or one of its jobs, pumping those oxygenated red blood cells all throughout your body. Just give a little attention to those processes. Your body's doing these things all the time, all day, every day. Just give yourself a little space, feel them, visualize them, maybe think about them. Think about how amazing your body is. And then as you inhale each time, you're not only infusing your cells with oxygen, but imagine infusing every 30 trillion cell with love as well. Take a couple more deep breaths with that awareness. And then bring both hands into your power center, your navel area. Bring your attention to that space. Feel the depths of your sense of self. Feel how loving each of the 30 trillion cells in your body gives you power. Feel your warrior energy. Your innate wisdom that comes from deep within. And then feel Mother Earth beneath you. So even if you're on a chair or a floor, wherever you are, feel that beneath that is Mother Earth, supporting you in every step you take along your path. Feel the knowledge and experience of your teachers and your teachers' teachers. Feel the wisdom of your ancestors and all those who have walked these paths before us. Remember that you have access to all this power and love whenever you need it. Remember that you carry all the wisdom of your ancestors and your teachers in your cells already. Remember that you are whole, perfectly unique, powerful, and beautiful just the way you are. So continue deep, steady breath. And slowly and gently start returning to your space, into our collective virtual space. Gently begin opening your eyes and lifting your gaze. You can slowly continue returning. We're going to come into time for questions. But again, like Toby did in the beginning, if you want to check in via the chat with a word or two of how you feel, that'd be nice for us to all check in with each other. And then as we're ready, we'll start opening for questions.
Now that I stopped sharing my screen, I do want to read a couple of the comments we had earlier on, because there were some good comments about connections between ESD and mindfulness or yoga. So when someone is grounded, it helps for assertiveness and it cultivates maybe intuition, which that's from Eleni, definitely. That's important. We haven't talked about intuition today, but that would be another core theme that definitely comes up in our classes, that I would say ESD is one great way to cultivate intuition, and yoga and mindfulness is another. Any practice that works with the mind-body connection, that works with awareness, that works with listening to our gut is a great practice for honing our intuition. So definitely. From Tasha, yoga is empowering self. It's also pushing your body and mind to the limit and learning what you're capable of. Definitely. The flexibility also helps with self-defense and often helps my clients who are dealing with PTSD. Yeah, we didn't talk a lot about trauma, but I would say like trauma-informed teaching is really relevant to yoga. It's really relevant to ESD, and both of those practices can really support healing. Absolutely. From Kim, deep connection to body and generation of power from our center. The center we connect to in Aikido is the second chakra center. That is interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because when I instruct people to bring their awareness to their power center, I feel like it's generally just that part of the body, like second and third chakra. That's interesting that it's a slightly different focus in that tradition. From Justine, teaching awareness as an ESD tool is essential. Yoga can be a great tool to develop self-awareness and spatial awareness. Mindfulness allows us to quietly reflect on what to do, how do I feel? Oh, sorry, what do I think? How do I feel? What do I want? These self-focused questions are so important since we often are focused on what others think and feel in terms of gender socialization. Definitely. It would be a great webinar to talk about intuition, connecting ESD with yoga. Right, so those are just comments from earlier on that I wanted to make sure that they made it into the recording. So now we can move to questions. Zoe said, thank you for bringing up the importance of teaching and modeling how to say yes as well as no. The socialization to say yes doesn't make for real consent. We need to discuss how to set those positive boundaries as an additional skill set. Yeah, I 100% agree. I wonder, one tool I've worked with in my ESD classes around the positive boundaries is with the technique where we name a behavior that we don't like or we don't want, and the ESD approach is you name the behavior. So you're touching my knee. That makes me uncomfortable. Stop or take your hand off me. That would be the ESD technique that we've trained to teach. One variation of that I've started teaching. So I'll do that version. And then I'll talk about positive boundaries, and I'll do another version where we try and transform the behavior. So you're touching my knee, that doesn't feel good. I would love for you to play with my hair instead. That would be one example of transforming a behavior that we don't like. Rather, so sometimes the boundary is I don't want you to touch me at all, but sometimes the boundary is I don't like that, but that doesn't mean I don't want to be in connection with you. And so that's one way that I work on the yes and setting positive boundaries, and not just consenting, but actually giving instruction about things that we like and things that make us feel good, as well as things that we don't like and things that make us feel bad. Other questions? Are people able to unmute themselves? I think at this point, if anyone had a burning question, we could just, oh, you can't. Okay, sorry.
I'm gonna unmute everyone. So if you have any questions, you can just jump right in.
Yes, hello, I'm Eleni. I'm really glad for this webinar. Thank you very much. I feel it's very close to me, and I haven't started teaching yet, but I'm on my way, so it's very important. I would like to ask, when you work with the third chakra, and you make some small exercises to feel it and to move the third chakra, I want to ask if what happens there? I mean, maybe something arises, and maybe that's something it's very strong. So from the people that they participate, have you? I mean, was it something that you could not manage to help the person? Sorry for the English. To help the person to release it fully, or to come back to a state that he feels okay. I mean, how do you manage with feelings, overwhelming feelings arising in the process? I don't know if my question is clear. I feel it's not clear.
Like if the participants start feeling things or things start coming up when we're working with the third chakra?
Yes. I mean, if it's unbearable, have you met a situation that this thing could be unbearable for someone, or that could not, he could leave this exercise or whatever?
Mm-hmm. It's never happened in a yoga class that anyone's, or for me, that any of my participants have felt that kind of overwhelming any feelings or anything like that, or no one's ever expressed that. But generally, before we start any class, we set some of the, we talk about what to expect and taking care of yourself, and if you have any feelings that you need to process, or if you need to leave, or if you need to make space, kind of like allowing for self-care within the process. But as far as working with the third chakra in the yoga part of a class, I haven't ever had to manage any overwhelming feelings about that. It seems like it's always been pretty calm and
powerful. Okay, great, thank you. It's important for the beginning to set some important things for the process, as you said.
And like I mentioned when I was talking a little bit more about the third chakra, like when it's out of balance, you might have issues with anger and control and low self-esteem or difficulty making decisions. I don't actually usually explain that very much of what you might be feeling if it's out of balance. I try to focus on what you would feel if it is balanced, or what we want to feel, which is feeling our sense of power, feeling our self-esteem and self-confidence, and our wisdom, and those things, focusing on the positive of having an open and balanced third chakra.
Yes, the attention goes to what we want to have, what we want to feel, and to do the positive things. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, well, if anyone has any more questions, we have maybe 1 more minute for a last question. All right, well, thank you so much. Toby and Amy, this was a great session, and as we said, we will have this recording shared, and I hope that you all enjoyed the webinar. We'll see you again next week. All right, take care.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.